So May 5th, or the week of May 5th leading up to it, started for the most part as most of any other week, so I was excited to Friday. It had already been a great week leading up to it, so I got to do a lot of great things throughout that week, and so I was really excited for Friday, being able to take the bike out and being able to bring your motorcycle to school that day. So the weather was starting to warm up, and Friday was fixing to be a pretty nice day. Nice spring day. It was looking like it was going to be. So I ended up riding into work that morning, and on my way into work, coming in on Ridge Pike, headed towards Collegeville, going through a green light, someone decided that they either didn't see me or they thought they could make the turn coming from the opposing direction, and they ended up turning left in front of me, which put me in a not great position, and I ended up hitting the SUV from the side, and that sent me flying, which ended up being a good thing in terms of the accident. Sent me flying as opposed to me being on the ground. Usually the nature of those types of accidents, the motorcyclist ends up getting run over. A lot of motorcyclists in the past, they end up losing limbs, losing legs, or losing arms, and taking serious injury to them. I still sustained serious injury, but thankfully, because of the nature of the injury, I was able to still keep all of my limbs, thankfully. And but still, of all those injuries, we'll start with my face, and then kind of work my way down. But I sustained lots of injury to my face, ended up breaking majority of my facial, all the bones in my face and around my face. Still have bone fragments in my nasal cavity. I broke my nose and everything around there. Ended up breaking my right orbital, sustaining serious damage to my right eye. Ended up going blind in my right eye several weeks later. After the accident, ended up having to go back in and get treated for that. Thankfully, I was able to gain my sight back after several days. So I sustained all the damage to my face, sustained damage to my clavicle, ended up breaking my right clavicle, ended up having to get a metal brace put in, and ended up breaking my both of my wrists. So that was definitely unexpected as well. It's one thing breaking one of your wrists, breaking both of them, that was not fun in any way. Ended up breaking 3 of the fingers on my right hand, and ended up breaking my right arm for the most part. Breaking it came completely severed, except for maybe just parts of it ended up being able to stay attached because of the skin there, but the bone and everything came fully detached. So that was not exactly how I wanted my Friday to go that morning, but throughout all of that, I remember waking up in the hospital and waking up probably several times before that, but my memory is very broken from that time period. Ended up having surgery on my jaw, which maybe I mentioned, but or didn't. But I ended up breaking my jaw as well. So my jaw ended up having to be wired shut for about 6 weeks and sustained significant damage to that. And so that still ended up still a lot of damage there that I'm going to have to deal with probably throughout the rest of my life. So aside from all of that, ended up waking up in the hospital. Met my parents there, or rather they met me there, and several other people that ended up coming to visit me in the hospital in those early days. And so things were not looking good, at least at that time. And I had several thoughts throughout all of that. So one of those thoughts in the midst of breaking all of those different things was, Lord, why was I chosen to go through this trial? Why me? Why did I have to go through this? That was one of my thoughts, and I think it's maybe a natural thought for many folks that have gone through similar trials. But in the midst of that, I also thought of just God and His providence. Some of my thoughts early on were, well, am I here? Am I dead? Am I alive? And obviously, I was still here. I was still alive. And the doctors and surgeons were able to put me back together, at least the best that they could. And I'd say they did, for the most part, I think they did a pretty good job with what they had to work with. So looking at that, the other sense of where my thoughts were at the time were also, wow, thank you, Lord, for allowing me to survive something that could have been much, much worse than it really was. And that allowed me to reflect a little bit on different trials and different things in my past, in my young adult life and going through college, some of the different trials that I went through going through that. It always has a theme to it. And one of those themes is, at least that I've seen in my life, it's just the lack of my faith that I've had in God throughout all of those. God has been there throughout all of those things. And one thing I often think about is God has been faithful to me, yet why do oftentimes I doubt him in the midst of many of those trials? In the midst of many of those trials, I have sometimes often thought, Lord, why me? How are you ever going to be able to remedy this situation, or help me pay this bill, or help me do a number of different things? I always doubted God. I would still pray to him, but I would pray to him in such a way where I'd be like, yes, Lord, maybe I'll pray to you, but how are you ever going to do this? I don't see how you can do this. And yet he was always faithful, and he has always allowed me to be brought through those trials, and he's always been there. He's always, just like he was there during my accident, and allowing me to be able to recover in the way that I have been able to recover at this point, and hopefully allow me to recover even more so. And that's one of the themes, is just for me to be more faithful to God, because he has been faithful to me. It's one thing to put your trust and faith in God in order to take you to heaven when you die, but it's another thing to be faithful in God also throughout your life and throughout the different trials that I've been brought through in my life, to remain faithful to God. He's always been faithful to me. He's always been there throughout each of those, and oftentimes looking back, I've been very ashamed by my lack of faith in each of those situations. And always, whenever God has brought me through those, I then realize, and I think to myself, wow, why didn't I have more faith? Why didn't I trust God more? That's often the thing that I wish I had done in the past. And so throughout this trial this past summer, and throughout my recovery process, I've often thought about that. Lord, thank you for bringing me through this, and I've wanted to learn to grow my faith, to be able to trust in God more in both the big things and the little things, and to not doubt him, to not think that he's limited by his capabilities. And so I'm greatly thankful to God for allowing me to be brought through this situation and to be able to make, for the most part, a pretty full recovery. I still have several surgeries in the future that I'm going to have to go through in order to take certain plates and certain metals that they had to put in. Those will hopefully be able to be taken out, and then hopefully I'll be able to continue the recovery process, to continue to work on some more mobility and some strength. But I'm greatly thankful to my God. I'm greatly thankful to the people of Valley Forge Baptist that have been very gracious to me and wishing me well, and the offering of to help me in many different ways. I've been greatly thankful, and I just can't thank the church enough for that and their continued prayers throughout all of that. So I'm grateful to God, and I hope that in the future I'll be able to be made more faithful, and to learn to put my trust in him a little bit more than I have, and to hopefully continue to grow my faith as we go through this journey we call life.